Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Sinister Stories. Today, we're going to be talking about the legend of the Lechuza. The legend of the Lechuza is a really popular legend in places like Mexico and the Philippines. So join me as we dive into the unknown and find out what exactly is a Lechuza. So sit back, relax, grab a drink as we find out exactly what is behind this legend. Now, a Lechuza is an owl, and I know exactly what you're thinking. Why would anybody be afraid of a stupid owl? Well, the thing is that in a lot of these places like Mexico and the Philippines, the owl is considered to be a part of witchcraft. The reason that people fear these owls are not the animals themselves. The people believe that these animals are in fact witches that take the form of these animals in order to get around. Now, these witches are not limited to the form of an owl, but this is their favorite transformation for the most part. Now, these owls are so feared in fact that in a lot of places in Mexico and the Philippines, rocks are thrown at them in order to drive them away. Witches turning into owls are not just an urban legend in this area, but are actually considered fact, and people will go out of their way to avoid these creatures. If you go deep into Mexican stories, you can even find some tales of people tying down owls and keeping them tied to a tree overnight. The next morning, they find out that they find a witch in the spot where the owl was the night before. The reason behind these stories is that people believe that witches, even though they can turn into these owls, cannot stay like this for a very long time. It in fact uses up too much of their power, and eventually they have to change back to their natural form. There are also stories of people running into lechuzas who have the face of a human woman. And at times, this lechuza or witch can actually talk to people even though she's in the form of an owl. Now, the lechuza is known for flying around the night skies of Mexico searching for its prey or someone to take back to their lair for their witchcraft purposes. But they do have a few tricks to lure as many people to them as possible. Now, lechuzas are known for hiding in spots where they can't easily be seen and letting out some noises in order to attract innocent prey. Now, the lechuza can whistle, and it'll whistle a number of tunes to try to attract as many people as possible. Now, I actually have a personal story from a lechuza. When I was younger, there was one that perched up on the tree outside my house, and it would whistle at our house. And my older brother walked out, and he whistled back at it, and it would repeat whatever my brother whistled. So if my brother would whistle one tune, it would say the same whistle back to him, and it was super creepy. And obviously, that's not something you should do, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. Now, lechuzas are also known for mimicking voices, and whenever they want somebody to come towards them, they usually choose a crying baby voice, since most people will walk towards that and try to find out what it is. Now, whenever their prey gets too close, they'll swoop down and pick them up, and they'll either take them back to their lair or they're going to eat them for dinner. Now, there are some versions of this story, and some people say that lechuzas are not in fact a physical form or a person, but they're the spirit of a witch that got persecuted long ago by villagers. And now she pretty much just haunts this area and flies around and tries to get revenge on the people that did her wrong. Now let's get into what people do to defend themselves against this lechuza. So any ordinary means of defense will not work, which means that you can't really hit it with anything. Bullets have no effect on it, which means that it can be almost immortal. But one thing that people say will work is if you're able to catch one and tie one down, then they'll eventually have to turn back to their witch form like I mentioned earlier. And salt is also another way to keep them away. So pouring salt on the entrances of your home or around your yard in general will keep a lechuza out since they have a deep fear for it. They are also known to avoid any kind of religious prayers. So usually people that see a lechuza will pray and they tend to either fly away or just avoid the area altogether. Now, the number one thing that you should not do to a lechuza is respond to its sounds. Whether it's a whistle or a baby crying, you should not go investigate and you should not make any sound towards it. Usually, hearing a lechuza whistle towards your house means that there is imminent death for one of your family members. So in order to avoid this, the second you hear a lechuza outside of your property or your yard, you have to make sure that you start cussing it out as much as possible, and this will eventually drive the lechuza away and take away any negative effects it had on your family. Now, this has been the legend of the lechuza. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't subbed already, be sure to do so down below, that way you won't miss any of my future videos. And make sure to hit that like button since it'll really help out my channel. Also, if you have any suggestions for future videos or creatures that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comments below so I can work on that right away. This has been Sinister Stories, and stay safe out there.